Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about books by women in the diaspora. I don't know how accurate that title is, but it's the best YouTube title I could think of. So basically these are books by women who are born or are descendant from outside of Western countries but have written books in English. Not super snappy, but this was a request by this commenter because I kind of mentioned it in last week's video where there were a bunch of books which I thought I could include in my Women in Translations video, but once I was doing my research I realised, oh, I can't actually, because a lot of these authors were either from the diaspora or wrote their books in English despite maybe living in places like India. So let's get right into it, and remember you can get all the books I'm going to be talking about from the description down below from bookshop.org. Bookshop.org is a company that works with local bookshops and independent bookshops to kick them back a little bit more money when you buy stuff off of bookshop.org. Alternatively, pick up the books from your library. The first book is a book that I really wanted to put on that list, but it actually didn't fit the criteria, which surprised me. It is Gin Patrol on the Purple Line. Gin Patrol on the Purple Line is written by an author who is from the part of India where my family is from Kerala. Kerala mentioned. Basically, this book I thought was going to be like prime, okay, this was translated, but actually our author actually wrote the book in English whilst they were working and studying in the UK. But basically, I digress, Gin Patrol on the Purple Line is like, it's like a detective mystery book, but also a social commentary. It genuinely is quite a sad book. The ending of the book particularly is, it's not a happy ending. The book is basically about trafficking. It's about child trafficking of children from the slums in India. So basically how the poor / working class / underclass, as the term we use in the UK, are exploited, especially including the children. And it is about a boy trying to investigate this, and it's sad, it's heart-wrenching. It tells you the reality of India as a country. It tells you the reality of the treatment of children, maybe not just in India. This could probably work worldwide, especially children who are from marginalized communities and how they're treated. It is quite the read. So if stories of human trafficking aren't really something for you, then, you know, maybe don't read it. But it is an extremely interesting novel, and I believe it was our author's debut novel. So the second book I'm going to be talking about is Pachinko. I'm not going to do too much detail about this because I actually have a video about this book, but Pachinko is a very famous novel over the past couple of years, which got turned into a TV show, I believe, on Apple TV+, and it basically follows like 3 generations of a family from occupied Korea under Japanese occupation, and kind of their trials and tribulations. And I think it starts prior to World War II and then goes until I think the early 2000s or slightly before that. It is heart-wrenching. It's a book that I couldn't put down. I just had to keep reading and keep going on. So I highly recommend it. Again, written by Kim Jin Lee, who is a diaspora author. So again, a book I really wanted to put on that list, but after doing some research, it wasn't translated, it was written in English. Third book is Half a Yellow Sun by Adichie. Again, extremely famous book. You've probably heard of it, you've probably read it. If you haven't, highly recommend it. It is set in Nigeria during the Nigerian Civil War / Biafran War, and basically follows people of different backgrounds and people of, you know, different loyalties within Nigeria at the time, and how their lives are affected and torn apart by the civil war. It, you know, really, it goes from like people who are maybe workers, people who are intelligentsia, people who are students, you know, people who have relations with people who may have different views to them on the Civil War. And it's a really great telling of just the brutalities of war, how war can tear people and families and lives apart, and written in English. And also, again, another debut novel. People put out banger debut novels all the time. But yeah, again, one I highly want to recommend. And yeah, was less surprised by this because I had known about Adichie beforehand, before reading the book, unlike the other two books where I hadn't known the authors beforehand. So less of a surprise. To be honest, most people know this book was written in English anyway, but it is such a good book, I just wanted to put it on the video. So, ta-da! And the final book I want to talk about is God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, which I think I'm putting at the end here because it exemplifies this video, exemplifies kind of the reason I made this video. This book, written by an Indian author, was written in English. Roy does talk about why she wrote the book in English, kind of how she wanted to use the English language maybe as her best way of being able to express everything she wanted in this book, and also make the book as widely accessible as possible for such a powerful story she wanted to tell. Also, South Indian writer, big up South India, Kerala mentioned. but I don't really know how much detail I should go into with this book. I think God of Small Things is a book that everyone should read, but with caveats. There are certain topics in there that are certainly need content warnings, including like abuse involving children. So obviously, I would maybe, before reading this book, if you've not read it, maybe just look at some of those potential themes in there which, might be like content warnings you need or trigger warnings you may need. Obviously, it is a very well written book, but it was also a very difficult book to get through. I think it took me a few attempts. I think I got to certain points of the book and I was like, I just need to put it down and step away. And then I went back to it, which obviously is kind of the point of the book, sort of explaining these sort of things that were happening and happen in India, especially given the news of what's happening in India at the moment. So definitely just a very fantastic, there's a reason Roy is so revered globally, although she also has got into trouble with the Indian government because of her speaking out about the BJP's handling of ethnic minorities and religious minorities and just the BJP in general. But that's a different video for a different channel, perhaps my politics channel. But yes, Roy, fantastic author, exemplifies sort of an author who is, well, in her case, not diaspora, she is an Indian author. And she was in India, I believe, when she wrote this book. But writing a book in English. Again, sort of a kind of book that one would normally expect to be a book written in one's own language. That feels weird to say, but a book that would maybe be translated into English, but wasn't. Was actually written in English. Again, a book that I would have loved to put in the last video, but wasn't written in any language from India. There's a lot of languages, by the way. Did you know that there's quite a lot of languages in India? And I know precisely a little bit of two. A little bit of three, technically.
How many languages do you speak?
But who's counting? But yeah, highly recommend God of Small Things, but do make sure you look into kind of some content warnings surrounding the books before you read them. So those are my books written by women in the diaspora / who wrote books in English. Not the most catchy title, but I'll think of one. Thank you to our commenter for asking me to make this video. I love the engagement and the back and forth with you guys in the comments down below, so please keep them up. And please, if you like this kind of thing, like me doing a video based off a comment, and if your comment is one where I'm like, oh cool, I can make a video out of that, I will, because that's community building. But yeah, there could have been so many more books I could have put on this list. I just whittled it down to 4 because I believe I did 4 books in the previous video. So there was like at least 10 books I wanted to put on here, a bunch of other authors. But I was like, okay, let's get it down to 4. And hey, who knows, maybe I can make another video like this, maybe with a catchier title. But it is, you know, awesome to be able to read all of these books by women from around the world, women from various backgrounds, and just, it's awesome. I love reading books by people from different backgrounds and different places, because I oftentimes feel like we kind of get stuck in a cycle of reading books by people who only tell stories that we relate to, or stories from where we're from. And I think being able to read stories from people from different places, of different backgrounds, of different cultures, really helps broaden our horizons. You know, obviously they say travel is a great way of broadening your horizons and making you a better person. Travel is expensive. Do you know what's less expensive than travel? Books. You can get these books from the description down below from bookshop.org. Link to the descriptions down below. Alternatively, you can get the books from your local library or buy them from your local independent bookstore. That would be really great. So, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member, and I hope you read a great book today.